webinar in the World Agriculture Forum series. Sorry, we're recording the webinar, obviously, so it's available to more people after the event as well. Thank you, as I was saying, for joining us from all corners of the world. I know it's very early in the morning for some of you and late in the evening for others, but we are grateful that you're joining this conversation. We think it's especially important to have it, especially around this time with the COP still going on, and really looking at what's happening and what learnings we can capitalize on, going from policy all the way to practice in the space of agri and food systems. Just one housekeeping announcement, please. If you're not one of the panelists, please keep your video off and your microphone so there's no disturbance. List your questions in the chat for any of the speakers. If it's targeted to one of them in particular, you can identify that. If not, just put a general chat in there. So let me introduce today's moderator. We are very grateful to Dr. Suresh Babu, Emeritus Research Fellow at IFPRI, for joining us and for agreeing to moderate this very important high-level discussion. Dr. Babu is an impact-oriented international agricultural development leader, program manager, policy impact analyst, and communicator with over 25 years of experience in food systems transformations, innovation, and evidence-based program development and implementation. Given the topic of today, we thought, his experience is extremely relevant based on data-driven policy analysis, policy advice, and institutional strengthening. He designed and implemented multi-country and multidisciplinary agricultural development and food systems interventions, including integration of local and global supply chains, outreach networks and partnerships, as well as resource mobilization. So he has successfully managed global, regional, and national programs in agricultural development, climate action, food security, nutrition, natural resources, environment, and sustainability sectors. Of course, agriculture and food systems sit sort of at the intersection of all these important domains. So I will hand over to him now to moderate the webinar and introduce the other panelists.
Thank you, Ramona. It's a wonderful introduction to the topic itself. The topic for the day for this policy dialogue is advancing sustainable agriculture. How do we go from policy to practice? And as the title says, we have no dearth of policy strategy documents. We have documents at the global level. All the time we are revising the definition of food security, for example, definition of sustainable agriculture as things emerge. And at the same time, we have also moved from 30 years ago talking about farming systems towards sustainable agriculture in the context of agricultural transformation. Then we are now talking about food systems transformation. But all these transformations, while we are changing according to the needs of the development process, we also have to understand how the policies at the global level, regional level, continental level, and national level are translated into practice. And without things happening on the ground, transformation happening at the farm level, at the community level, at the local levels, in the context of the local agroecological conditions, for example, we cannot have this broader agricultural and food system transformation. That is for sure. But the process in which it happens, we all know, is while we agree upon certain challenges that are facing us at the national level, for example, and how do we translate that challenges into opportunities and the policies policies for guiding them. But then that has to translate into action on the ground. So that is what we are going to be talking about in the context of how do we advance sustainable agriculture. To do that, we have an excellent set of panelists. I will briefly introduce them and we will ask them to give initially 5 minutes of the introduction from their perspective. How do they see advancing sustainable agriculture can move from policy to practice? And after that, we follow up with digging in deeper in the questions for each one of them and go deeper into the subject itself. So first, let me welcome Dr. Ibrahim Mayaki, who has joined us. Dr. Mayaki is a former Prime Minister of Niger, a food security envoy for African Union. For many years, he led African continent in the NEPAD AU with his leadership, and he has also been a policy researcher, leader of policy research institution in Senegal for many years. Comes with a pretty much overview of what is happening in African agriculture. So we are so glad to have you, Dr. Ibrahim Mayaki, and glad to have you here. Let me then introduce Dr. William Dar from the Asian perspective, as well as from the international agriculture research perspective. Dr. Dar has spent almost his lifetime in agricultural research and development. He is also vice chair of the World Agricultural Forum board, former secretary of agriculture Philippines, former director general for ICRISAT, International Crop Research Institute for the semi-arid tropics, ICRISAT, for 15 years, one of the longest serving DGs. And of course, he has been guiding light for many young researchers for many years. Dr. William Dar, welcome to the forum. Let me introduce my own colleague, Dr. Claudia Ringler. Dr. Ringler has been a researcher on natural resources and climate change, sustainable agriculture, water resources management for many years at IFPRI. She pretty much spent all her professional career at IFPRI. Now she is the director of natural resources and resilience thematic area in IFPRI, and she will be bringing her expertise as a policy researcher and how she deals with policy making processes, and at the same time working on the ground, developing evidence for sustainable agricultural development. And last but not least, let me introduce Professor Ramesh Chand. Professor Ramesh Chand is a leading agricultural economist. For many years, guided the process of planning and policy making, policy implementation in the context of India, but he has also been guiding the international research processes. He is now the member secretary for agriculture for the National Institution for Transforming India. We call it Niti Aayog in India. It's also used to be called Planning Commission, for those you remember Planning Commission type of work. So it's a very important organization for policy making in India, directly reporting to the Prime Minister of India. And he is also a member of the Integrated Partnership Board of the Consultative Group on International Agriculture Research, where he brings his expertise to guide the international research and development processes. And he has been member of many other councils and organizations throughout the world, and visiting professors in many universities. I welcome Dr. Ramesh Chand for this meeting and policy dialogue. With that introduction, I will eventually ask Ramona to come and do the closing remarks, but let's dive right in terms of a quick overview from each one of the panelists, distinguished panelists here. Let me start with Dr. Ibrahim Mayaki. Dr. Mayaki, please go ahead and give your perspective from your long-term experience on what do you see is needed in terms of taking the policies and the strategies towards implementation on the ground and driving and advancing sustainable agriculture. Dr. Mayaki, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Babu. It's a pleasure to be here with such a distinguished panel. And do you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, good. So I will, I have 5 minutes, I will try to be quick and focus on 4 points which I think are important regarding to the subjects that is going to be discussed. And my first point will be that all the lexicology you refer to, all the the terms that have been referred, agricultural transformation, sustainable agriculture, agroecology, food systems, etc. The different approaches that have been designed conceptually are not always reflected institutionally. I'm talking about the African continent, which is the one I minimally know, are not always reflected institutionally. What do I mean by an institutional reflection of these concepts? It's that the evolution of the concepts has not had a parallel in terms of institutional evolution. So most of the ministries of agriculture that we have today, ministries of environment, ministries of blue economy, etc., and even the ministries of planning have not evolved institutionally in order to adapt to these new concepts and these new approaches. That will be my first point. The second point is the issue of multi-sectorality. The food systems approach opens a dimension of multi-sectorality, looking at agriculture not as a mono-sector, but in a multi-sectoral approach. And that multi-sectoral approach, which has influenced the CADEP processes in Africa, from Maputo in 2003 to Malabo in 2014 to Kampala in 2025. But multi-sectoral approach, especially Malabo and Kampala, it was not the case in Maputo, which was monosectoral, but in Malabo and Kampala, has helped design action plans at the continental level for implementation at regional and national level. But then again, if you look at the way we implemented these CADEP processes, we didn't have a multi-sectorality reflected, the management of multi-sectorality reflected institutionally. So most of what we did was essentially top-down with a little relevance of a local level in terms of inputs to the policy design, and with a low horizontal coherence between, let's say, agriculture, environment, nutrition, infrastructure, etc. And that has been one of the main reasons of the lack of implementation, the sufficient lack of implementation, and the obstacles that we faced are essentially derived from that. So what I'm trying to say is that if institutions do not follow the evolution of the approaches, the capacity to implement is hindered. So on the capacity to implement, my one point about coordination, and I think that's what we are trying to solve in our Kampala Action Plan, which was adopted at the beginning of this year. Coordination between the relevant actors of the implementation of a transformative agenda is a key issue that we need to take up front. And that needs a specific type of leadership. We have talked about world government approaches, etc. But the leadership of a transformative, of the implementation of this agenda needs to be not only at the top of the institutions, but at the same time, a specific type of leadership which has hands into implementation needs to emerge. Otherwise, the systems institutionally stay as they are, the approaches do evolve, and we make as if these new approaches are providing and procuring the necessary changes. So last point, and I will end there because I think I'm done with the 5 minutes. The last point which I want to emphasize, my message is that as we think about implementation, we should think about the required institutional innovations that can allow implementation to really take place. As long as we do not invest into these institutional innovations, and that's a governance issue, then implementation will hardly be as we want it to be, and the objectives that we fix in the CADE processes will hardly be achievable. And I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Mayaki. This is we will keep that in mind between policy and practice. In the middle is what institutions are, and they matter, and how they are organized and how they are coordinated matter. Let me quickly go to Dr. Willie Dar. Dr. Dar, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Supes, for this honor to join this important dialogue under the auspices of the World Agriculture Forum. You know, across the world, governments and institutions have crafted visionary agricultural roadmaps. The challenge today is no longer the absence of good policies, and the real challenge is ensuring that implementation is coherent, science-informed, and anchored on institutions capable of delivering measurable and lasting impact. From my experience across the CGR system at ICRISAT and in steering agricultural and food systems transformation in the Philippines, I have learned one constant truth. Agriculture transforms only when science transforms the field. Let me highlight 3 enablers that consistently determine whether policies succeed or remain aspirational. First, leadership and institutional coherence. No policy, no matter how brilliant, can succeed in a fragmented environment. When agriculture, water, climate, trade, and finance agencies operate in silos, implementation weakens. But when leadership aligns these ministries under a unified strategy with shared outcomes and mutual accountability, then transformation accelerates. Second, strong delivery systems anchored on science and evidence. The science policy practice continuum must be institutionalized. Research informs policies. Policies guide investments. Investments empower farmers, and farmer feedback loops refine the system. And the third element is multi-sectoral partnerships. Governments cannot carry agricultural and food systems transformation alone. The private sector, research institutions, civil society, and farmer organizations must be active co-drivers. In successful countries, these partnerships are not occasional, they are institutionalized. So we must also acknowledge a growing imperative. Agriculture must be climate resilient, water secure, digitally enabled, and inclusive of women and youth. Now, this demands not incremental change, but systemic reform. And this is where platforms such as the World Agriculture Forum are most valuable as conveners, connectors, and catalysts of shared solutions. So let us commit in this dialogue to move beyond policy intention and pursue policy implementation with vigor, with rigor, science, and shared leadership. Thank you. I end there, Suresh.
Thank you, Dr. Vilidar. And let me ask just a quick change. Claudia, your time is a little bit constrained. I want you to come now and give your 5 minutes introduction. And depending on how long you stay, we'll dig deeper into your issues. Go ahead, Dr. Claudia.
Yeah, thanks so much, and great to hear the comments from the 2 previous speakers with decades of experience on how to convert policy into practice. So when I sat down a couple of days ago to think about this question, I decided to really keep it very simple. So when can a policy lead to change on the ground? So I think the first key factor is that there has to be a need for change. Because that if there is no real need for change, we have a lot of policies nowadays that might be imposed by donors or by multilateral institutions, and so yes, governments are putting these policies in place, and especially I'm coming from an environmental background. But then if there is currently no need for implementation on the ground, so of course it's very unlikely that we can actually move from policy to practice. Just a fun example would be, a policy on reducing groundwater depletion, or to have joint surface and groundwater management in DRC. It's unlikely to lead to change on the ground because there is little irrigation and not much groundwater depletion. So I think that's the first thing that has to hold. Otherwise, we cannot expect change to happen. I think a second very important factor without which it's very difficult to get from policy to practice is awareness raising, consultations, and adequate communication of why change is needed. Because yes, change might be needed, or it might be understood by scientists or by policymakers, but that doesn't mean that the same understanding exists with the people, and that's usually farmers, who are supposed to live the change or make the change. There's obviously many situations out there where we know that there wasn't adequate awareness raising, there wasn't adequate consultation, and therefore change did not happen, and actually policies might have to be abandoned. If you think about all these so-called land grab policies in the past, but even the market support price change that was envisioned in India, for us economists, it made a lot of sense, also from a natural resource perspective, because it could actually have helped to reduce groundwater depletions if we removed the support price for rice, for example. But because there was not a lot of consultation, there was not a lot of awareness raising, even so the change is needed, it was not possible to get from a desired policy to change on the ground. A third, of course, very important factor is adequate financing. We've talked about COP already, and the last couple COPs are all about financing. So we know that there's a need for change, right? We know we have to become more climate resilient, both from an adaptation and from a mitigation perspective. And we know, the awareness is actually quite strong. When we do surveys in low and middle income countries, there's a very clear understanding that climate change is occurring. There's also a pretty clear understanding that agriculture contributes to climate change, but we have failed to raise any significant funding, especially for smallholder agriculture. That has been a consistent situation. Everyone talks about it, but no one actually changes it. So as long as we're not able to raise financing to put policies into practice, where we have the awareness, where we know the need for change, we are not able to actually affect any change. The last point I was thinking about, and I think it's also very important and probably under studied, is alignment of incentives. And I guess sometimes that is also linked with communication and awareness raising. If incentives are not aligned, and we heard from Dr. Dar, the importance of this cross-sectoral alignment as well. If incentives are simply not aligned, it's unlikely that a policy for which we have the need, the funding, etc., will achieve its targets. And one recent example that I'm also working on is the very dire need to reduce irrigation water use, or to make water use more efficient in Uzbekistan, Central Asia. The region is very well known for the drying up of the Aral Sea because of vast irrigation of cotton and wheat, starting in the late 60s. So there is just no doubt that we have to do something. But the question always is how, and there has been consistent failure in reining in irrigation water use. The most recent policy directive is actually to subsidize advanced irrigation technologies, such as drip irrigation, which is also done, many other parts of the world. And the thinking in Uzbekistan is that drip irrigation would reduce irrigation water use, but also the electricity needed to pump all of this water uphill from rivers that are much further below. But there is a misalignment of incentives that was just overlooked, brushed aside, and as a result of that, we are not getting anywhere. And the misalignment of incentives simply is that the irrigation department itself receives large subsidies for electricity for pumping water uphill. So if they become more efficient, they actually lose their own funding, and they basically would have to fire their own staff if they implement a policy that otherwise made a lot of sense. So just as a reminder, alignment of incentives is really very important if we want to move from policy to practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudia. Stick around as long as you can, and we'll come back to you. We'll move to Dr. Ramesh Chand from India, please. Doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. I feel that most of the problem related to sustainability are the result of mindless pursuit of growth in food production, agriculture growth. At one time, it was justified when world was suffering from hunger, food security was very serious issues. At that time, nobody will pay attention to that soil is getting, fertility is getting affected, water is getting overexploited, because at any cost you want food. I think the by nature, the green revolution technology, it was a resource intensive technology. And to maximize out of those technologies, we also came with policies which were also maximizing resource extraction and more and more resource use. Nobody was looking at what is water productivity. Nobody was looking at what is the cost of growth. Everybody was for this, I would say, this growth kind of situation. Not only growth in the existing environment, we created a situation where you find that the crops which are suitable for high rainfall are being grown more in the arid region, in the low rainfall area. In India, we have example now. The maximum concentration of rice is in northwest India, where rainfall is very, very low. And you just find that rice was not known in that regions before 1970, 73, 74. But now if you go there in summer season, you don't see any plant other than rice alone. So that we completely ignored agroclimatic zoning principle, suitability to agriculture endowments. It was just completely ignored, and one policy after another came for overexploitation of resources. As Claudia also mentioned, we have plenty of those in India, South Asia, and many other countries that highly subsidized power for extraction of water. In many cases, even free water. Very high subsidy on chemical fertilizers, but no encouragement to make use of, say, farmyard manure and those kind of things. I think no wonder that we have closed our eye to the fact that we were sacrificing long run just for short run gains. But then I think now this realization is occurring that if we keep following the same path, the day is not far, then not only our livelihood will be coming under threat, even planet may be under threat. If you see latest Eat Lancet report and other reports, how planetary boundaries are getting stretched because of agriculture. So situation, I think, really very, very serious. Now I would say that from local government, conscious citizen, right up to United Nations, everybody talking what is the solution. UN talking of food system approach to address this kind of problems. And many countries, like in India, we have sustainability missions, all those kind of things. The second reason why this problem is becoming more and more severe over time, that the more we are talking of addressing it, the more severe it is becoming. I have not seen any indicator where the declining water table has been reversed. The declining organic carbon in the soil has been reversed. So just find that it appears sometimes as if we are doing only lip service to these kind of things. But there are, I would say, some pockets emerging where this is being taken seriously. The second reason that the solution or how we can address sustainability problem is also not easy. It is also not easy because much of the gain cannot be seen. They are long run. Very often, what economists call, you have market failure, externalities. So those are quite serious kind of problem. But you find both desperate response as well as conscious response to fix it or to do something to address it. And I wrote on some of these aspects that today world is in a position to even sacrifice some of the growth in agriculture and balance it by promoting sustainability, which will not cause any adverse effect on natural resources. I've seen growth rate in many countries, but I'm more confident and more updated on what is the growth rate in India. Our food production is now growing at 4.5%. Domestic demand is growing only by 2.5%. Population growth is declining less than 1% because of all those things. So we are having really half of the growth in the total 4.5% growth in last 11 years, for which the demand is not from food. Either we have to use it for industrial products or we have to export it, whatever. I think now, since per capita food production is rising, most of the country except some African countries, world is in a situation where without sacrificing, without worrying about food security, we can, I think, do this trade-off. And I did some calculation that by 2030, if in India we bring 20% of our land under some sort of sustainable practice, then whatever short run yield penalty, long run, I'm not sure whether it will be yield penalty or it will be yield gain. That is something which can be easily absorbed. But to do this, again, there are two set of practices. One is what modern science, modern thinker, policymaker talk, and another is that traditional practices which were there before Green Revolution, that the agriculture which was done before Green Revolution had a lot of sustainability elements, mixed cropping, chickpea wheat mixed cropping, water harvesting, green manuring, all those kind of things. I think as we go along and we want to address sustainability, we need to appropriately blend both the traditional practices as well as the options which we have from modern science, that we can improve efficiency through precision farming, all those kind of things. So we need to combine these two because it is a formidable challenge and it can't be just addressed by one set of problems. So I will stop at that. Maybe a few other idea which I have,
Yes.
I would like to
Yes.
reserve those
Yes,
for my
yes,
second
yes, yes.
intervention.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chand. Very, very good perspective from and examples, and also a new thinking that the people are not thinking. That's absolutely wonderful to think about. It's not all about growth, and how we can rethink what we have been doing for 30, 40 years is an important contribution to this. Let me now dig deeper into the discussion point. We would like to also think about how do we examine the enabling conditions for such a sustainable development that we want to grow in the agriculture sector. We already talked about some examples of how do we go from policy and how not to go from policy to practice, and what is working, what is not working. And we also talked about institutional gaps and governance bottlenecks that Dr. Mayaki and Dr. Dar pointed out, the multi-sectorality, why institutions are not evolving, and of course, what are the opportunities that may exist in terms of the technology, governance, and institutions, and also bringing multi-sectoral policies and the capacities that are needed on the ground. With that kind of broad perspectives that we have, let me dig little bit deeper and go back to Dr. Ibrahim Mayaki on particularly asking about how the implementation particularly, and there are some questions in the related to that in the chat as well as I've been following. What is to be done now? We know the institutions are not evolving according to the needs of the Kampala, for example, declaration or Kampala strategy right now for CAADP. What is your perspective on the reforms that are needed, the governance reforms or the cross-sectoral mechanism that we may need for closing this gap? What is your maybe 3 interventions that the minister for or the prime minister should take in order to bring this multi-sectorality and make sure these institutions are evolving fast? Dr. Mayaki, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think, humbly speaking, from my small experience, 3 aspects are needed. The first one, in most, and I'm talking about Africa, in most of African countries, which I know, the binom between finance ministries and planning ministries is the key link which organizes public policy design. So as long as agricultural ministries, environment ministries, etc., are not within that space, change hardly happens. Because at the end of the day, when cabinet meetings take place, the 2 who are prominently positioned in order to shape the space of public policy design are planning and finance. This can only be changed if there is an active role of the head of government or president of a council, etc. So coordination needs to take place at the top so that in that space, ministries like environment and agriculture are included, and we have then they can have a political weight, because the political economy is extremely important. Agriculture ministers and environment ministers are positioned generally, from what I've seen in the continent, in the 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th place. And finance and planning are always ahead. So that's my first point. The second point is the feedback loop. I think giving importance to data regarding implementation and using that data to reframe the policies is extremely important. And we, from what I've seen, generally in the continent, the capacity to implement is closely linked to the quality of the statistical offices that work on the feedback data. So the quality of the statistical offices, not only in the planning ministries and so on, but also in the specific ministries, agriculture, environment, water, etc., they need a strong statistical capacity. They need a strong data management capacity. And the third point, which we have, which was evaluated when we looked at the implementation of the Malabo, which led us to Kampala, is the low inclusion of a local level. So policies are designed at national level, translated at provincial level, but the local level is really where implementation takes place. And if the local level is not included, then nobody thinks about incrementing the capacity of a local level. And this aspect is important. It has to do with decentralization processes. It has to do with rethinking from bottom up to a combination of bottom up with top down to with bottom up. So the local dimension is extremely important and should be really taken care of and included in that space. So the space of public policy design shouldn't be monopolized. It has to be multi-actor, and all the actors should have a weight in order to influence the policy design. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Wonderful, Dr. Mayaki. No, this is a very good perspective coming from you because you have overseen the CADAP evolution for many years. And we learned from Maputo to Malabo to Kampala what needs to be done as we go along. Let me at this stage bring in Dr. Claudia Ringler to dig a little bit deeper into this policy to practice from a researcher perspective. Dr. Claudia, what is needed in terms of guiding this policy implementation? And what is your perspective on that? And you've given excellent examples in the previous introduction, but take us further on that, please.
Yeah, thanks so much. I also want to follow on Dr. Chand, who also followed on my points, given that India is really the prime example where natural resource sustainability and agricultural production systems are clashing. And as Dr. Chand has also said, a lot of policies have been tried, and unfortunately they're tugging in opposite directions, which is why we are not really able to make a lot of progress. So one concept an approach that I think we have been using a lot in research, and I think we are seeing quite some of that also moving into practice, is the concept of the water, energy, food, environment systems approach, or nexus approach, because what it does is either qualitatively or quantitatively assess that if one sector, let's say agriculture, is trying to expand production, what does it do in terms of water security? What does it do in terms of energy security, and also in terms of environmental health? And for example, that kind of approach and analytical system then allows us also to look into into policies and strategies that otherwise wouldn't be considered in an integrated system. And so the example again for India is the biofuel policy, where the government has decided, let's do more blending. We want more energy security, independence, also some mitigation. We're talking about COP30. Let's as part of India's overall mitigation strategy. So the idea has been to increase biofuel production, but unfortunately from sugarcane and rice. So those are two crops, that are environmentally quite challenging, extremely high water users. Sugarcane is a tropical or subtropical crop, and it's grown, across South Asia in semi-arid environments. So this is a real challenge, and using this water, energy, food, ecosystem health nexus concept that is actually trying to give each of these sectors equal weight, which is again something we've already heard by the previous speakers, and is really then trying to calculate the trade-offs, the economic trade-offs, the costs for different sectors, from, let's say, energy security strategies that might focus on growing more sugarcane, for transportation fuel, compared with food security goals, and compared with water security goals and environmental health goals. And so basically what that concept allows us to do is not only to look at the cost of trade-offs, but also synergies. So there might actually be some synergies where some waste products from sugarcane production could actually be used for biofuel. Of course, there is resource use efficiency and cost considerations, but there are basically, it can help us to get to new innovations where we can actually reduce waste, waste, for example, also, or produce new outputs, for example, from biogas, which is also which is also a strategy that at least farmers have started to adopt, at least in Gujarat. So are there basically entry points using this WAF and Nexus concept where we can come together across those sectors, also across the departments and both the federal and the state governments in India and elsewhere, by applying the concept to be much more serious, about the environmental health perspective of these otherwise disparate policies. So I think that is a great concept, and I think that could really potentially make a difference in India. And I think there's increased, there is, I think, increased understanding that this concept might help. And there's also some work of CGR in terms of so-called Nexus scorecard, working with different government entities in the Indian government to see to what extent they are cognizant of how other sectoral strategies and activities can reduce trade-offs and improve synergy. So I think that is something that should be tried even more. Even in the very, very complex policy environment in India, given the huge gains that can be made and the huge losses that can be avoided, especially for future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Claudia. I know you have to go for another important meeting. Please feel free to stay as long as you can. And thanks for your interventions and new ideas. Already what you talked about in terms of Nexus is the multi-sectoral approach we are talking about. How do we bring this energy ministry, food ministry, and water ministry together is a challenge already. But how do we get that into the ground? So where we work together, and convergence there on the ground is also very important. Thanks for bringing that up. And let me move on to Dr. Willie Dar, a long-term scientist, science-driven policymaker, to give us some concrete examples of how science and innovation can be successfully brought into the policy debate and drive that to the action on the ground in the context of sustainable agriculture. Dr. Dar, please.
Yeah, thank you again, Suresh. Allow me to expand on how science and innovation can be embedded into national policy, and more importantly, how these are translated into real outcomes on the ground. I've been in India with ICRISAT and came back again to the country as Secretary of Agriculture, and I have championed one core principle: science must inform policy, and policy must empower science. Okay, so let me illustrate this through a concrete case: the transformation initiatives we led in the Philippines between 2019 and 2022. Upon appointed by President Duterte as Secretary of Agriculture, there was a new law, the rice tariffication law, okay, liberalizing rice importation, replacing quantitative restrictions. The idea when you liberalize, of course, is to give the private sector the opportunity to import rice needed by the country. As we then we're only producing about 85% of our rice requirement. So there's the need to bring in to handle this gap of about 15%. So we really would like to believe that, when you combine this new policy for liberalizing the rice importation and with good management and implementation and follow through, then we were able to, maintain acceptable level of rice inflation. I mean, rice have become before a very, high contributory to food inflation. So the 2 years, 11 months I have been there have been very critical, even in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic. The rice prices throughout that time under President Duterte have been, properly done and good outcomes in general. Now, during this period, there are other initiatives that we have institutionalized. As Secretary of Agriculture, we have this 1DA reform agenda. And what are the anchors of this 1DA reform agenda? There are 4 pillars: modernization, industrialization, farm consolidation, and professionalization. Now, at the heart of these reforms was a dedicated effort to embed science into every major agricultural decision. Now, let me give you one example. Example one, I mean. On soil health and water innovations, we scaled soil nutrient mapping and digital diagnostics to guide fertilizer programs, optimize input use, and reduce waste. What made it work was not the technology alone, but the policy that mandated evidence-based nutrient management nationwide. Now, example 2, and this was our experience in ICRISAT, the village model applications. We adopted farmer participatory approaches from semi-arid regions of India, integrating climate-smart seeds, water harvesting, and integrated pest management. Scaling succeeded because policies required states, research institutions, and farmers to collaborate under a unified extension platform. Now, one state that we did this model, the Kotapalli watershed model, was applied in a big way in Karnataka. 3.5 million hectares of rain-fed areas. The government then came to ICRISAT and asked us what can we do together to promote again the growth of rain-fed agriculture in 3.5 million hectares. So all the necessary agronomic practices, science-based innovations were done. And after 3 to 5 years doing this very participatory approach, including bringing back soil health to the rain-fed areas and good water management practices, the growth of rain-fed agriculture of Karnataka have gone back to 5% annually. Now, another example is the science-based seed systems. We expanded hybrid rice. I'm talking about here in the Philippines. We expanded hybrid rice and hybrid corn adoption through performance-based seed certification and strong public-private partnerships. This aligned policy, science, and farmer needs, ensuring quality seeds reach the last mile. And why did these transitions work? Again, let me highlight the clear policy anchors, strong institutional partnerships, dedicated funding, and monitoring and evaluation. So let me conclude. Science is not an add-on to agricultural policy. It is the foundation. Again, really there is this good nexus of science and policy and action. Thank you, Soros.
Thank you, Dr. Willie, that science-driven policy is important, evidence-driven policy is important, and it doesn't come as an afterthought, but should be thought out very early on. And your examples are very good, particularly coming from what you have done in ICRISAT, and you have taken that and experience to the decision-making system in Philippines and shown a lot of impact on the ground. So thanks for sharing that experience. Now let me move to Dr. Ramesh Chand, a long-term policy researcher as well as policy advisor to the Government of India. Dr. Chand, what are the common reasons you talked about policies are at odds? But what is the reasons well-designed policies sometimes fail at the last minute, for example? And how can we kind of work with the structures we have in the context of India, for example, federal state kind of system? How can we kind of turn that failures around for success? Your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. You mentioned about well-designed policies, but I feel that policies are not always well-designed. In many cases, they are
Yeah,
poorly designed and doomed to fail. But let us focus on
yeah,
well-designed policy, that what is wrong with well-designed
yeah.
policy, not giving the desired result or failing at the last mile. Based on now 11 year dealing with the policy required to give ideas to government which work on ground, not as an academician that wrote a paper, whether the suggestions and recommendation are worth adopting or not. So looking into this entirety, political economy, farmer livelihood, all other kind of goals based on my, because I'm now with this policy commission, this is my 11th year, look at ground level and macro level, all those things. I think the major reason is that uh, policies are designed to target general situation or general problem, like water table is declining, organic matter in soil is declining, biodiversity is shrinking. So you come with a policy which is just meant in general way how you can address 4 or 5 ways, options, maximum like that. But solution, particularly for sustainability related issues, involve very strong specificities, require lot of nuances and different kind of solution to fit into a different kind of situation, and this is missing. Most of the
Okay.
cases you find that this is missing. I would like to share with the 4 or 5 experiences which I just looked for appearing on your this discussion. Let me share with the group those 3 or 4 you can call case studies. See, we were giving a lot of incentive for micro irrigation, for water harvesting. Some places it worked, some places it didn't work, some places it worked very well, some places did not work at all. So I just find, like I can give you example that one area where it was most successful, that there was a water stress. The farmers were getting canal irrigation, which was available to them after a long interval. The groundwater has lot of salinity, so they were not able to use groundwater. So they were given this incentive that if you set aside 1/10 of your land, government will give you the support for constructing a pond where you just store the water. So villagers started storing half of the groundwater and half of the canal water. And then they took advantage of incentive for using micro irrigation, not flood irrigation, going for drip or sprinkler irrigation. So it worked very well in that area because it responded, it fit very well with the sustainability context. So first, I would say that where the solution fit very well with the context, you see the success, and where it doesn't fit with the context, then you don't see the success. The second is
Very good.
some of you
Go
may
ahead.
be knowing that India started this climate resilient agriculture. We started in 3,000 villages. Some of the villages where we got a very good solution, they were the villages where we adopted total solution, whole solution that focus on entire villages, focus on water harvesting, combined with micro irrigation, combined with the distribution of quality seed, extension advice, development of capacity of the farmer, even linking through, but in India is becoming popular, e-market. Okay. So you found that it was quite successful, but in other villages where we have only one or two intervention, that we give you subsidy for micro irrigation plus seed, but forgot about capacity of farmer or market, it didn't work. So lesson two, convergence for total solution, very, very important. Where the convergence for total solution was there, we got positive results. Third is, I just see some of you again will be knowing that Marathwada region of Maharashtra, where even drinking water was not available. In summer, water has to be taken in trains or tankers, even for drinking. And in like Weed district, if you have heard about it, 7 year out of 10 used to be drought, crop failure. Farmer were just growing soybean, cotton with very low yield, crop failure, rampant case of suicide. So there, if you thought about alternative solution, alternative local solution with involvement of community and external agency or activist, we just found, in fact, I had this this booklet where the case study of all those villages where poverty and all those things were there, how they were able to implement that harvesting rainwater, digging the water stream, digging the wells where water was very less and dry. Now you find that those water stream have become perennials, and there is complete replacement of soybean cotton with horticulture crops. And according to study done by a academic institute, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, the income in 7 years have increased 10 times. That is the average kind of thing. So the lesson is that where we have some committed either government workers or some activists. In this case, there was a activist who left after 20-year international service, thought of doing something in rural India, like many people in India do. Really, a sort of a revolution has happened, and we are just seeing how we can replicate those kind of stories. So local solution with strong involvement of a community and a committed external agency or some activist. This kind of example I have seen even in Andhra, where community was deciding if the forecast is monsoon will be so much, water will be so much. So we decide how much cropping pattern will, what kind of cropping pattern every farmer will follow, so that water table doesn't further falls. So these are examples of community managed solution for this. Now, from that, I just come to distorted incentives. I think the distorted incentives, whether it is free power, whether it is heavy subsidy on, say, chemical fertilizer, rather than balancing the subsidy between, say, bio inputs and all those kind of things. So alternative way of giving incentives. Like I'm strongly pleading with some of the states, rather than giving free or subsidized power, you just give some, say, $80 per acre or whatever figure comes directly to the farmers, but let power be metered, okay?
Yeah.
And those are the innovative solutions that then
Yeah.
you can make farmer earn more. You can
Yeah.
also see to it that once it get linked to the price, we have
Yeah.
seen that if now farmer are giving 30 irrigation to paddy, under
Yeah.
priced meter, that number reduces to 20 or even something less than that. So these are other that we replace the distorted incentive with right set of incentives that can
Yeah.
also that redesigning incentive through some imaginative thinking. Then there's one more
Exactly.
problem which I want to flag, just last point if there is time.
Please.
I think the solutions are very difficult where they clash with livelihood of farmers. You can either protect livelihood or improve livelihood, but if you are this solution is hitting the livelihood, then you just find that it is very difficult. And sometimes macro environment is such that it is beyond your control. Since Claudia mentioned that India diverting some of sugarcane for bioethanol, I wanted to just mention it that it is not always to meet our energy goal. Now, most of the biofuel in India is coming from maize. Well, it is a crop where we have lot of technological change. In some of the states, Dr. Babu, in Tamil Nadu, Andhra, the yield is more than 7 ton. In Uttar Pradesh,
Wow.
it is 2 ton, 2.5 ton. So it makes very good sense, very good economics that the cheapest source of biofuel is maize, not
Yeah.
sugarcane or any other thing. But when international prices are so low and you are producing a particular level of sugar and you can't dispose of in international market, so what you do with it?
Right.
So these kind
Yeah.
of problem also sometimes complicate the situation. But I believe that from various success stories which I have seen and read in India, that give me some ray of hope that would make me optimistic that we can blend both growth with the sustainability with the right
Yeah.
set of policies, practice, R&D, and all those things. Thank you.
Very good, very good, very good. Actually, summary of whole wide range of issues that we talked about, Dr. Chand. This is fantastic. We do want to take one or two questions from the audience. We have been watching the chat, and several of the questions apparently are addressed in the comments and the follow up deep dive by the panelists excellently. One thing that stands out, though, I want to raise that and then have a quick reaction from Dr. Mayaki on that is how do we involve youth in moving forward is standing up very clearly in the chat as a question. With that question answered, I will turn it over to Ramona to give closing remarks. Dr. Mayaki, Africa particularly is burgeoning with youth. And how do we bring youth into this and how do we successfully be inclusive in this process?
Well, I think it's a key question because, as you know, the median age in the continent is 19. And you cannot have the same governance systems where societies have a median age over 40 and to societies where the median age is 19. Because the expectations of the youth are an immense pressure, and they want solutions right now. So the best way to have them included is for them to be part of policy design process. So the question is to avoid designing a policy and then bringing the youth to discuss the policy which has been designed. And that's the critical error that should not be made. So they have to be part of the policy design process. And if they are part of a policy design process, then they can look at the accomplishment of their expectations in the mid and long term. Otherwise, the pressure they will put on the system is such that it will create disequilibriums within within governance. And we have seen it in Africa with all that issue of Gen Z, the Generation Z, in countries that are making progresses economically and countries that are lagging behind. So whatever the context, the expectations of the young population are very high. So governance-wise, you need to rethink the way you design the policy so that they're included from the start. And that's one of the institutional innovations I was referring to. So, and we are seeing a very strange aspect, which I wanted to mention very briefly. In many African countries, you see many startups developed by young urban Africans who move with the necessary resources into the rural areas. And they are confronted is not the term, but I don't have another term right now. But they have in front of them young rurals who want to get out of the rural areas and come to the cities. So you have this movement, which can also be quite dangerous if it is not managed properly, governance-wise.
Yes. So thank you for that perspective, because we need to bring in youth right from the beginning, not as an afterthought. That is wonderful, Dr. Mayaki. With that, we have a lot of young people joining this conversation all the time. So I want to keep them engaged in our conversation as we go along. Please keep coming to our policy dialogues as we put out from World Agriculture Forum. With that, let me turn it over to Ramona for closing remarks. And on my behalf, I thank Dr. Ramesh Chand, Dr. Willidar, Dr. Claudia Ringler, and Dr. Ibrahim Mayaki for their excellent contribution. I can't think of any better panelists to talk about this topic this morning. Ramona, please.
Thank you very much. And yes, it's been fascinating. And I think the complementing perspectives of the different speakers, not just from different parts of the world, but also reflecting on their experience, have really brought the issue from sort of a conceptual discussion all the way to actually sharing concrete examples from India, from Africa, from the Philippines, from Uzbekistan, talking about learning, measurement, impact, right? References to livelihoods, and talking about all the challenges in implementation as well, when the incentives are not aligned, when we don't have the capacity, the leadership, perhaps the need was misjudged in the first place. We don't have the financing, the will, or what have you, or we don't have the right stakeholders involved. Apart from the youth, which you just brought up, I've also seen references in the chat about the smallholder farmers and how do they participate in this process? When are they heard? When do they give their inputs? And the private sector, of course. So all the different stakeholders. But I think it's really been sort of fascinating, as I said, bringing this discussion on policy to practice from the high level all the way to concrete examples. Something Dr. Dar said also stayed with me in terms of looking at science as well, not just as an add-on, but the foundation of good policies, not a luxury, therefore capacity. I think it came up across the webinar, and all the different speakers brought it up, starting with Dr. Mayaki in the very beginning, the capacity to implement, to measure, to adapt when necessary to coordinate with other ministries, with other agencies, with other countries, perhaps, and capacity and leadership, again, not just at the top level, all the way down to the local level, to different agencies and actors involved. I think the discussion also today reflects the need for spaces such as this one, which are neutral and independent, cross-sectoral, where learning is shared. It's a space to reflect, learn from each other, and perhaps feed this back into future policymaking programs, practices, engagements. So we do hope that this has been useful. And I do invite you to stay tuned for further such discussions and webinars in the series that the World Agriculture Forum is organizing. There is one later on this month as well on soil health, which was also referred to today, and one in December on women and the role of women in agriculture. So thank you all very much again for joining us from all corners of the world and at all hours of the day and staying with us. And thank you, Dr. Suresh Babu, for magnificent moderation of this very insightful discussion. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And thanks to the WAF team for organizing this.